Good evening again, everyone. Yesterday, we started talking about product management. We talk about the fact that product management is the intersection between UX, tech, and business. Okay. We also talk about what is a product, right? It can be anything, software, hardware, right? Any item or service that you want to sell to the customer or what they need or want. We talk about the classification of products. We talk about business products, industry products. We talk about the customer type product, which is your B2B, your B2C, right? We talk about consumer product, convenience, shopping, specialty, and unsought. Okay. Yesterday as well, we also talked about the forms of product managers. We talked about the fact that we have internal PMs, we have B2B PMs, we have B2C PMs, right? And we talked about the difference between the three of them, where it is easier, the one that is more complex and requires more creativity, right? And the one that has less risk. Okay, so today we're going to continue by talking about the common products manager roles, right? So these are the common product manager roles you'll find. You can have a job title called product manager. So what the product manager does is manages the entire product life cycle and the product roadmap. So you're going to be dealing with different stakeholders, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, right? So internal stakeholders will include like the engineering team, the sales team, marketing team, legal, leadership. External teams will be customer, end user, and partners. You can also have a job title called product owner within the organization. So when you have a title called product owner, it just shows that you're working in an environment where maybe they're using the Scrum, right? So you're going to be supporting the development team. You're going to be prioritizing the product backlog. You're going to be creating user stories. So your stakeholders are majorly internal, developers, designers, and technical managers, right? You can also have growth product manager. So a growth product manager is someone that focuses on the business outcomes. So most time when your role is to grow the product, that means the product is already in existence, right? The product is already in production. They just want to grow that product. They want to increase the customer retention. They want to increase revenue on that product. So most of the time, your stakeholders will be business leaders. If your role is a technical product manager, is also majorly like a product owner. You're going to be working with engineering team, core specification and product functionalities. You'll be rolling with developers, designers, and technical managers. And if your role is also a platform product manager, you are going to be creating and optimizing technical components shared across multiple products. So an example of a platform product manager is someone that is managing maybe an Azure platform, or someone that is managing an AWS platform. So all those ones, they are platform product managers, right? So sample of that. When you see growth product manager are more like from the business, right? You hear things like they require you to have marketing skills, sales skills, things like that, because at that point in time, they are looking at, customer retentions and revenue. But if you're going to be working on development, it's likely you'll be a product manager or a product owner. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between product and project manager. So a project manager is someone that delivers a project based on a timeline, a budget, and an agreed scope. Why? And a product manager will deliver on a goal. So how can you differentiate this easily? So when you are talking about project management, a project manager, you're going to be working on a project that has an end. You get what I'm saying? The project is going to come to an end one day. But when you're a product manager, there is no end, right? Even if you are the one starting that product, you are the one implementing that product, it doesn't end. You are going to continue to manage that product till the product is end of life and end of support, till the product is retired. So let me give you an example. If you are managing a project, for example, recently RBC bought HSBC, right? So HSBC Canada, right? Now RBC owns HSBC Canada, right? And currently they are trying to do the integration between RBC and HSBC Canada. In that scenario, it's going to be a project because it's going to come to an end. At a certain point, there will be nothing like HSBC Canada anymore, right? They will all be RBC, right? So in that scenario, is a project, is a merger and acquisition, right? There's already a structure in place. They know what they want to deliver. What they want to deliver is they want to make sure HSBC Canada is integrated into RBC, right? But when you're talking about a product, it is a situation where you know the goal you want to deliver, right? It's not something, so just look at it from the angle of, if you are a product manager, there is no end. There is no end date. You can't say that, oh, this project is going to finish in 2 years. This project is going to finish in 1 year. No. So as a product manager, you're going to continue to manage that thing you're working on. When that thing is delivered already, you will continue to manage the operation of that product till it is end of life or end of support, or until they retire the product, or until the business say they don't want to use that product anymore. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. I hope it's clear. Do we have any question between product manager and a project manager? So we can differentiate between the two, right? So if you see in a job description, if you look at what you're going to be working on, you can differentiate if you're going to be working on a product or you're working on a project that will have an end, right? So sometime you might be working on a project, but at the end of the day, they're going to manage it like using Scrum, and they will have a product owner on that project. So this will help you differentiate the two. Because if it's a project, it means that, oh, when it's end, they're going to pass it down to operations, right? But if there's someone on that team that works as a product manager, you know that the person will continue to manage that product until we decide that we are not using that product anymore. Now, let's talk about the product life cycle. So this is the life cycle of a product. You know, we've been talking about products, right? Now, the life cycle of the product starts from introduction. So what does it mean to introduce? So what it means when you say you are introducing, it just means that you are introducing into the market. At this point, your product is ready, right? So you are launching your product into the market. That is just what it means, right? So let's imagine that there was a time, right? TikTok, you know, everywhere when TikTok was launching to the market, right? At that point in time, we're saying that it has been introduced into the market. You spend so much money to develop that application, right? And you now introduce it to the market. So when they say introduce to the market, that means everyone around can use it. That product has been introduced into the market. Okay, so that's the first stage of the product life cycle, when you introduce into the market. And I give an example of Windows 11. I know that almost everyone is now on Windows 11. Windows 11 was introduced last year, right? So a lot of people started, you know, operating on Windows 11, right? So at that point, they finished building the application and they've introduced it to us, and we start using Windows 11. So after the introduction stage, the next stage in the product life cycle is growth. So what happened in the growth stage? The growth stage is when your product has been accepted by the market. Now everyone is using your product. At this point, right, it is expected that you don't lose money anymore. This is where you want to start breaking even. You know, when they say someone is breaking even, right? So let's say during your development, when you are developing the application, you spent $500,000, right? At the growth stage, you want to start breaking even, meaning that the money you spent into developing the product, the 500,000, you want to start making it back, right? At that point, you need to make that 500,000 back and start making profits on the product. So that's when we say your product is in the growth stage. It is growing, right? So I gave an example of TikTok. You can see that TikTok have grown so much. If you look at their revenue now, they've made so much money, right? So at that point, you say that your product is in the growth stage, right? So what do organizations do at this point in time when their product is in the growth stage? Right? They want to start improving that product, right? They are listening to what the customer is saying, right? So every update you're giving, every complaint you put out there, they will take all those information, they will take it to their backlog, their product backlog. Then they will start prioritizing their product backlog, right? To start implementing those things that the users are saying. They will start implementing those complaints. They will start implementing those features, right? So that's what they start doing at that stage because they want to make sure that the product continues to grow, right? They want to make sure that the product is in your face and you continue to use it, right? I gave you an example of Twitter yesterday. Before you know it, Twitter now has a space where you can speak. If you notice, Twitter was a place where you should be writing, but right now, because they want to retain their customer share, they're doing what the customer wants, right? After the growth stage, the next stage is the maturity stage. When you say in the product lifecycle, when you say you're at the maturity stage, it means that you are at the top, right? At that point, you have a lot of competitors, right? People are coming with different variation of your product. They might even build a better one than yours, right? So you want to be innovative. You want to stay innovative. I use the example of Snapchat. You remember when Snapchat started doing status updates? Before you know it, we started having Instagram updates, status updates. We started having Facebook status updates. We started having WhatsApp status updates. You get what I'm saying, right? At that point, you start having variation, right, of your product. So Snapchat also was being creative. They started creating different animations, something that can make your face clearer, something that can make your face more beautiful, something that can change your hair color. They are just trying to be innovative so that they can stay on top of the game, right? So after the maturity stage, the final stage of the life cycle is decline, right? That decline stage is where your product is not being used anymore, right? That is where at that point in time, your product has declined, right? So is that at that point in time, they phase out your products, right? So I use an example of BlackBerry Messenger. Today, I don't know. I will ask you guys, do you know anyone that is still using BlackBerry Messenger? BlackBerry Messenger is dead, right? I don't think you can talk about anyone currently still using BlackBerry Messenger. And I can bet you there was a time every one of us could not do without BlackBerry Messenger, right? Everyone is always requesting, can I have your PIN? Can I have your BB PIN? Your BB PIN, your BB PIN. But today, there is nothing like that anymore, right? As I when BlackBerry PIN was reigning, there was nothing like WhatsApp, right? So I'm just trying to tell you that when a product get to a decline stage, it dies. At that point in time, they decommission that product, right? So as a product manager, you go through this life cycle. You continue to be innovative. You want to stay at that maturity stage. You want people to continue to use your product until it gets to a point where they can't use the product anymore, then it dies. So this is what the life cycle of a product look like. Any questions or any comments? Okay, so we understand the product life cycle. Now I'll move to the product development process. So someone is going to ask, what's the difference between product development process and the product life cycle? So product development process is the process of you developing your product, right? This is what happens before you launch your product. Remember I said that at this point where you introduce your product, you are launching, you develop the product at that time. At least you've developed the minimal viable product and you are launching it to the public, right? before you get to this space, these are the things you need to do, right? So how do you build your products, right? So ideas can come from anywhere. So an idea is conceived, right? So the idea is, as a product manager, you are not the one to bring up the idea. Your job is to collate and prioritize all the idea, either good or bad, right? So idea can come from anywhere, right? So for example, if you are a product manager that is managing internal employees, right? So your data will come from employee metrics. If you're a B2B PM, your data will come from either employee or clients, right? If you're a B2C, it will come from users, the communities, your co-workers, right? So you guys remember in those days, right? Everybody used to read newspapers, right? But right now, you see that a lot of people read news on their phone, right? Then in those days, everything is on newspaper. If you go on the train, you see people reading newspaper. But obviously, somebody conceived an idea and say, instead of, let's do what they call it, instead of paper news, let's do electronic news for people to consume via their phones, right? Remember in those days as well, we used to have alarms. Everywhere you go, you have alarms. But before you know it, someone brought an idea like, oh, let's have the alarms on the clock. Let's have an app for alarms and clock on the phone, right? So instead of people buying different alarms, they can just use the alarms on their phone. And the same goes to cameras as well, right? So people say, oh, let's have good cameras on the phone. So people don't need to buy extra camera. They can just use their phone to take pictures. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that ideation, ideas can come from anywhere, right? And it's the first stage, right, of the development process. At this point, you just want to know, like, what are we building? What are the ideas? What are the ways we want to solve people's problem, right? You want to collect user problem. You want to brainstorm as a team, right? This is where you now start deciding, is it going to be a web application? Is it going to be a mobile application? Your goal here is just for you to understand the purpose of the product. So that product you're building, what is the purpose, right? So a phone is a product. All the different apps on that phone, they are all products on its own, right? So you can have product in a product in a product in a product. I showed you yesterday that Instagram is a product. Instagram live or Instagram story is a product, right? You can have a product manager managing that one separate from Instagram as a whole. You get what I'm saying, right? So the next stage is to plan. So after you understand the purpose of the product, then you plan, right? You start strategizing. You want to know what the problem you are trying to solve. You want to validate that problem. In this scenario, you are doing things like market research. You are doing business cases. You are interviewing customers. You're building roadmap. That's when I talk about the fact that you need to understand how to do a lot of analysis, right? And that's why I say you need to learn business analysis, because you'll be doing things like interviewing customers. You want to know, how should you facilitate that session? How should you interview customers? What kind of questions should you be asking the customers, right? So if you know how to do analysis, you understand all those processes, easier for you to be able to do that, right? The goal here is for you to validate the product. You want to set the product vision. You want to know the direction of that product. After that, you start developing the products. At this point in time, you want to build like a minimal viable product, something that should work, something that we can, put out there for users to use. Because most time when you build your MVP, you want to collect feedback on those MVP. You want to make improvements on them, get feedback as early as possible, right? So you develop them, you now start iterating. So after you iterate, what are you doing when you're iterating? You're just validating the hypothesis. You want to continue to improve that product till you are ready to launch. So the iteration can go like about 3 times. So what do you do here? Most of it, let me explain this in an easier way. So let's say that we have, let me get names. Let's say we have Abigail and Abolaji and Adebayo, right? Let's say all of you here, 65 of you are going to be using this product. But we can say, okay, let's Abigail, Abolaji, and Adebayo, test the product. Let them do a pilot testing. They do a pilot, they give feedback. You just keep iterating, right, to get better feedback, to update that, to continually, improve that product till you guys are ready to launch that product, right? So something like that's what you do in iteration till you're ready. Then after all that iteration is done, then you launch the products. At that point in time, you are introducing the product into the public, right? You want to gauge people's reaction. So when you launch that product, that is a great start. So this launch here is the introduction stage here, right? So when you launch, you've now introduced, then the product will now go through this life cycle, right? So here, steady state leading to maintain or kill. So when you launch the product, right, then steady state, this is steady state. Your growth and maturity is your steady state, right? Then maintain and kill, steady states, or you kill it. Okay, so this is what the product life cycle looks like. So you use this product, this process to develop it, then you launch it, and you continue to manage that product till nobody use that product anymore. Okay. So what are the activities of a project manager, right? So as I'm saying, product manager, in some organization, they will call them the chief product owner, right? If you get to the organization and you are the product owner, this is what you're going to be doing, what you have on my right. If you are the chief product owner, you're going to be doing what we have on the left. Okay, so in this, as we continue along, I'm going to focus on the product owner, what is on the right, because you are here to learn Scrum. And if you are the product owner on that Scrum team, this is what you're going to be doing. Okay, but if you are the chief product owner, then you're going to be doing this. So let me give you an example of this. You can see chief product owner. Let's say this chief product owner is Instagram, right? Then you can now have product owner 1 managing this Scrum team as Instagram Live. You can have another product owner here as Instagram status updates. You can have another one here as maybe Instagram messaging, right? So this is the chief product owner for the main product, like for the big product that will decide all these things, right? But this product owner will focus on what is on the right here. Okay, so let's look at what the chief product owner is focusing on: ideation, strategic direction of the product, right? So when they say ideas, it doesn't mean it's the one that will have all the ideas, but it will make sure that all the ideas are being collated, right? It's going to make business case for those ideas. It's going to advocate for funding, right? It's going to position the products in the market. It's responsible for the profit and loss, right? It's going to be doing product portfolio management, pricing, promotion, placements. It's going to decide on the go-to-market strategy. It's going to retire the product. It will give the final situation on whether the product should be retired or not, right? Now, if you're a product owner, so I'm sure some of you say, well, I'm not planning to be a product owner. The truth is that if you're a Salesforce consultant or you're a Salesforce business analyst and you are employed in an organization and they tell you that, oh, you're going to be working on this project, you're going to be the one that will speak for us on the project. So if you go there and you're the one speaking on behalf of the business on the project, you're going to be the product owner on that project, right? If you're not the product owner, you might be the business analyst working with the product owner on that project. And this will be some of your responsibilities. You are going to be determining the vision of the product. You are going to be building the roadmap, the product backlog of the product. You are going to be planning for releases. What's going into this release? What is going into the next release? These are the things you're going to focus on, right? Feedback, help in UAT. So when the developers are finished building, you're going to be providing feedback. We call it in sprint review, right? You're going to attend sprint review to provide feedbacks, right? So customer expectation management, prioritization, dependency management, these are the things you are going to be doing, right? You're going to be attending all the Scrum events. We're going to go through the Scrum events, right? You're going to be attending all the Scrum events. You're going to be doing product backlog refinement. What are you doing in refinement? You're going to be prioritizing. I'm going to explain all that. You're going to be doing user stories, story acceptance. You're going to be tracking releases. You're going to work in collaboration with development team, and you're going to be helping in testing the product, right? So these are the things you're going to be doing on that team, okay? So how do you plan for your product roadmap? How do you plan for your product roadmap? So this is how you plan for your product roadmap. So now for the PO, for your product owner, or let's say product manager, these are the things that is expected of you in your Scrum team. Now, this is what is expected of you, though it doesn't mean that you're going to do it alone. Remember, when it comes to Scrum teams, you are supposed to work in collaboration with your team, right? But you are the one leading this aspect to get it done. So what are you going to be doing? You're going to be working on the product vision. So your job is to do the product vision, the product strategy, the product roadmap, your release plan, and your product backlog. So that will be your responsibility. So we'll take this one after the other. Let's start with the vision. Product vision is your responsibility. So this is what a product vision looks like. There are 3 ways in which you can do a product vision, right? The first one is what we call the product vision board, right? So you're going to put your vision here. What is the purpose of you creating this product? What are the positive change it will bring about? What are the target group? What needs, what problem are you trying to solve, right? What product is this? Is it feasible to develop the product? What are the business goals? So we call this a product vision board. Another way you can write your product vision is through an elevator pitch. This is a very common one. If you work in a product environment, you're going to see this a lot, right? So the elevator pitch says, for target customer, who are the customers you are targeting, right? For example, if you want to build an app, right? Let's say a musical app, right? Maybe that is targeted to young adults, to teenagers, right? So you can, build, you can say target customers for young adults and teenager. Statements of need. Maybe they need their kind of music, or a kind of music that is tailored towards them, something like that. The product name, what kind of product are you building? Let's say Gen Z music is in a what category of product are you trying to build? What are the benefits? We are going to do an example of this, okay? Unlike our competitor, maybe unlike our competitor like Spotify, our product is differentiated. So what makes your product different from Spotify? Something like that. So elevator pitch is very key, right? It helps you to put the product in perspective, right? Or you can use a vision box, right? So it's almost the same as well. In the front of the box, you have the product name, 3 to 5 key selling objective. Then at the back of the box, you have your product description, your feature list, and your target user, something like that, right? So these are the 3 common ways in which you can put your product vision in place. Now, you as a product owner, you're going to come up with this, right? Most of the time, you don't have to do it alone. You're going to do it with the Scrum team, but they will want to listen to you first, right? Because this is like the representation of the core essence of your product, right? This is what makes your product unique, right? So it should be something that everyone in the company will understand. So it should be clear, right? So what's, when you put it together, by the time you're sharing, right, within the organization, it is very clear what you are trying to achieve, right? So this is key, and this is where you should start from. So when you are working on something, you want to understand the vision of what you are working on, okay? And there are 3 ways, as I said, right? But elevator pitch and the vision board is the common one. So I'll go back. Vision. So we've done vision, right? We're going to do that in an example as we start our simulation, right? So product vision is the first step. Now, the second step is your product strategy, right? Now, I will talk about the fact that your product vision, you can use these 3 methods. Now, your product strategy. there are different ways in which you can do your product strategy. So you can use business models, you can use personas, you can use goals, initiative, competitive analysis. You can even combine some of it together. You don't have to use the 5, but you can combine some of it to get your product strategy in place. What are you trying to do? So let's look at the business model first. So an example of a business model is using a business canvas. So what are you doing here, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to understand what you're building, right? You want to be sure, right, that this is actually solving the problem. You want to even understand all the problems you are trying to solve, the solution you are building, what are the growth opportunities, who are your partners, who are your key partners, what are the key activities, right? What is the cost structure when you're building these products? What are your revenue streams, right? What are your customer segment? What kind of relationship are you going to have with the customers, right? What is the value proposition for the product you're building? So this is going to help you, right? Like it's going to give you a better picture of what you are trying to do, right? So this will help you answer a lot of questions, right, while you are putting this in place. Now, this is a business canvas. There are other ones. Some people use 10 Ps. Some people use the Potter's 5 forces, right? There are different ways you can come up with your business model, okay? Now, the second one is competitive analysis. So you can also use competitive analysis to derive your product strategy. So what do we do in competitive analysis? You're going to take your products, then you take other competitor that has the same kind of products you're doing, right? And you're now going to start analyzing it. What does your product going to offer that the other competitor does not have, right? Or what does your product, what is your product, what are the features of your product that is already existing in other applications or other products, right? So you want to differentiate all those things, right? So that you can understand what your unique selling point is. Why are you actually building that product? Because what unique problem is it solving, right? So you want to understand that. Some people use what we call SWOT analysis, right? You want to understand the strengths. What are the strengths of your application or your product? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the threats, right? This will help you give clarity, right? So you can understand that, is there an alternate solution, right, to what you're building, right? So all this research will help you understand your landscape better, right? And it will help you understand that is your product uniquely positioned to solve a problem, right? So you want that to be very clear. So this is another way in which you can do your do your product strategy. So the third one is personas. So if we go to personas, these are just like fictional characters, right? So you can see that you have these beautiful diagrams, right? This can be done using Visio, this can be done using Figma, this can be done using PowerPoint, right? But some people don't even bother. They can put it in form of a table, in form of an Excel. But what are they just trying to do here? They are just using fictional characters to decide, right? The customer, they are trying to bring the customer to life, right? So you can see they will use an example. Okay, for example, let's say we want to build an application, a mobile application, right, for music. They will now take, for example, Alexander. They will try to say, okay, Alexander is a male, maybe it's around age 45. He works downtown Toronto. Okay, why will he want to use this product, right? They will start listing the behavior of Alexander. What are the needs of Alexander, right? What are his frustrations, right? Why would I think Alexander will be interested in using this product? They will list it. That will now make them to understand, you know, what their product is trying to solve. They can now see all the issues, right? They use Janet, the family planner, right? They will also look at it from Janet's perspective. Janet is is not a working woman. She's a stay-at-home mom. Okay, in what way will she want to use that application? Oh, she's interested in using that application because it's easy to share with her family at a discounted rate. You know, all those things will be listed out. So what are they trying to do? They're just trying to understand their products more, right? And the issues or the uniqueness of that product. So personas are just like fictional characters, and you can always come up with that. So you look at the different areas your product is going to be targeting, right? And you use that to decide. Then we have initiative and goals. So for initiative, right, you can also have it this way. This is an initiative. So they'll just come up with different, they can say, okay, we want to increase revenue by 30% in the third quarters. So they'll come up with goals, like they want to measure, they want to have a time-bound goal objective, right? And start saying, okay, these are the things we want to put in place, right? So this kind of initiative and goals, they are used with other strategies, right? They combine them with other strategies to come up with what they want to do, right? And the last one, which is the goals as well. So they combine them together to decide that, okay, these are the things we want to achieve during this time period. In the next quarter, in the next 18 months, we want to do this, right? So, but these goals are combined with the other strategies. So these are the ways as a product person, you come up with the strategy. So based on all this strategy, you now start deciding what your features should look like. What are the things you want to put in place? So those features you want to put in place, you now start deciding how do we want to achieve those things, right? You now start putting them into roadmap, right? Do you have a question, Arinze?
You can unmute and speak.
I don't know if you has anything to say. I'll continue. So they start building roadmaps based on what they decide, right? All those things that they put together, those features, they will now start deciding that which one do we want to come first, what should be our MVP, right? So when you hear things like the version 1, they're saying that this should be our MVP. These are the things we want to release first to the public. If everything is fine, then we can start adding more initiative. We can start adding more features, right? We can start adding more features to the initiative. So that's how they come up with that. So this is just like a sample of a roadmap, right? So you can see that in quarter 1, 2018, this is what they want to achieve. In quarter 2, 2018, they have all the things they want to achieve. In quarter 3 and in quarter 4. Now, in quarter 1, the things they want to achieve, when they finish doing all this, they say, okay, we're going to launch the app, right? When we launch it, it will be called version 1.0, right? After that, they can release another one, maybe version 1.01. Then they said after they gain the 5% market share, they will release another version, right? So that means they will add more features to it. Then after that, they gain 15% market share. They will release the iPhone and tablet app launch, right? Then they will gain, if they gain about 15% of the market share, they will release another one, 1.20. So something like that. So the minimal viable product is the version 1.0. Then they start adding more features based on what they planned in their roadmap. Sometimes just this thing they plan in their roadmap, if feedback is coming from the users, this roadmap can change, right? Based on prioritization. So they keep prioritizing and it might change. Okay, so this is what a sample of what the roadmap looks like. So breaking down your features from your roadmap. So what this is just saying is that, for example, if I take, for example, one of these features on the roadmap, I can break it down into epics and stories. So I can break it down into epic and stories. So let's say I have my, I can pick one of the features here and say, okay, let's just say, for example, wireframing. So I can come here and say, okay, this is better. So I can say, I want to travel, right? So out of, let's say travel, right? I can say, for example, book a flight as my epic. I want to book a flight. So for me to be able to book my flight, there are a lot of things that need to happen. I need to log in, right? I need to be able to search for my flight. I need to pick a flight. I need to book that flight at the end of the day. So for me to book a flight, a lot of activities need to happen. So those activities right, are going to be stories and subtasks that make up that epic. So what is an epic? An epic is just a large story, right, that needs to be broken down so that it's easier to attain, it's easier to work on. So that's just the difference, right? So you take one of your features and break it down into large stories. Then that large story, you start breaking it down into smaller stories. Now, every organization, they will do their own differently. So depending on the organization you find yourself, they will write their stories in a different way, right? So you want to understand how the organization write their story, but always know that they will have features and they will have epics and they will have stories, right? And they'll have maybe subtasks under those stories, right? And remember that I said the epic is just a large stories that needs to be worked on. Now, I will show you an example. So this is an example of a product backlog, which we are going to do when we're doing our simulation, right? Now, what they have here, you can see epic here. So this epic here, these are all the epic they have here. You see C spaces, EZ plus, space travel partner, summer Sultan sale, afterborn plus. You can see all this, they are epic. Now, inside each of these epic, they have different stories. So you can see this large team support. This large team support here, I said this is an epic, right? So all these stories here are the stories under this epic. This epic is just a large story. So all these are stories under this epic, right? So when these stories are completed, it means that this epic is done. This epic can also lead to it's just like, how would I put it? This is a feature, right? This feature has epic, epic, epic. Now they have stories, stories, stories. So if you finish this epic, you finish this epic, you finish this epic, then maybe you achieve that the feature here and you'll be ready to deliver that feature to production, right? So this is what this is just. This is just like they are using this to track the stories. Okay. So when we're on Jira and we're doing this, you understand better. So this, what we want, when they say product backlog, what they just mean is that all these items that you say you want to do, that you've put in your roadmap, based on all the strategies that you've been using, all the analysis you've been doing to understand the features that you want to put out there. Based on all that, all these things, you are not putting it here because you know that you are not putting it here because you know that you need to be able to track them, right? So you are putting them in Jira to be able to track them and see what work has been done, which I'm going to show you as we go along. Now, all these points here, they are just story pointing, right? I'm going to show you how to do story pointing, right? All these are story pointing, and the numbers here is just showing that for this sprint 6 that you are working on, 58 is already in progress, 7 is completed, 21 is about to be done, right? So this is what this means, right? So this is just a sample. I'm showing you that, okay, the products, all those roadmap will now be put in Jira, then you start tracking from there. So when we are doing our simulation, I will show you how we can turn this roadmap into our backlog, right? But if you get to an organization and the team is already working, right, then you will just meet them using the Jira already if they are using Jira. If there is a new project, then they might want to put the roadmap in place first. Then from there, they will now transfer everything into the Jira board. Yeah, so just like work breakdown structure. But work breakdown structure is what you do when you're doing doing like the waterfall approach, right? So you break down your work. But in Jira too, you are in Agile, yes, you do that roadmap. It's like work breakdown, then you now put them in Jira. Exactly. So I showed this another example. You have some products manager, they are going to plan for like 6 months ahead. They will just have what they want to do, right? They have all the details, then they now put them in the backlog, then they will start prioritizing, right? So this is what they are planning for. Their sprint 1, their sprint 2. In this scenario, their sprint is a monthly sprint. I'm going to show you that when we start Scrum. In this scenario, their sprint is a monthly sprint. You can have a 2-week sprint or a 4-week sprint. So, but in this scenario, it is a monthly sprint. Okay. So this will bring us to the end of product management. I just want to introduce it to you. And the main goal I wanted to achieve here is to tell you about the what product management is, integration between the UX, tech, and business. That's what the function where product management functions, the different type of products that you can have, how the products are being classified, right? The forms of product managers, internal, B2B, B2C, right? The common product manager roles you can have, either you're working with internal or you're working from the business side when you're growing the application, right? The difference between project and product, projects always have an end. When you're managing the product, there is no end until the product is retired, right? And the product life cycle, how it starts. You launch the product, you grow, you mature until you don't use the product anymore, then it declines. Then the process of developing the product till you launch the product, then the activities you do as a product owner. If you know how to, by the time we do that, you'll see that it's not hard to put a vision in place and all those things. So we're going to do all that. Then your responsibility as the product owner, you put the vision, the strategy, the roadmap in place, your release plan, and your product backlog. I'm going to show you how to do the release plan. It's easy. It's not hard. Then you have your product backlog. And I said for the vision, you have 3 ways you can do it: your vision board, your elevator pitch, or your vision box. Okay. And for your strategy, you can use different models. You can use your business model, like your business canvas, your portfolio. You can use competitive analysis. You can use personas. You can use goals. You can use initiative. And you can combine 1 or 2 to get more understanding of what you want to do, to be able to come up with the features you want to actually deliver, right? And I showed you that based on that roadmap, when all this thing is being analyzed during initial planning, after that, you can put them in your backlog for you to start tracking them, okay? Which we're going to do in our simulation, show you how we'll move those information into our Jira. Any question? No question? Okay, if we don't have question, we'll do a bit of Kahoot on the products, then we'll start our Agile. We'll start Scrum. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen on the Kahoot. We'll do a few questions. It's just about 6 questions. Then we'll now start working on Agile. We'll take a break, then we'll start Agile. Okay. Okay, I can see K Oluleye, so start coming in OB. So for people that are new here, you go to your kahoot.it on your phone. It's going to ask for your name and your pin and game pin. You can put this pin in and you can come in, okay? I'm waiting for more people to join. The tech people are telling you can also scan the barcode, which will take you straight to the site. Okay. If you're techie, you do that. Well, almost everyone here is techie. So we'll start now, okay? Question 1. Product management is the intersection between the following except one. Except one. Good job. Yes. Product management is the intersection between business, technology, and UX. Good job. Good job. Let's see. DD, either bad, near, and K. DD and bad. I'm very sure. I really want to know the internet you use, or is it just about that you are the fastest fingers? Okay, let's go on. Question number 2 is a true or false. A product is any item or service you sell to serve a customer's need or wants. Good job. Everyone got it. So we all know what a product is. Okay, good, 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 good. Okay, Didi and Bad, Ida, Abology, and Tito. Which of the following is not a major form of product managers? Which one is not a form of product managers? Good job. We have internal, B2B, and B2C. Good job. Good job. Musala from nowhere. And Steph, you move 4 places up. We still have Didi and Bad leading. Mex also came up. Which of the following is not a consumer product classification? Which one is not a consumer product classification? Good job. It's not specialty. You know, we have convenience, shopping, specialty, and unsought, right? Remember, it's hardware. Remember, we classify products under business classification. We have the industry classification, right? And we have the customer type product, and we have the consumer product classification. And under that, we have 4: convenience, shopping, specialty, and unsought. So hardware is not part of it, okay? So Didi, Musala, Bad, Ada, Tito. Musala, Didi, Musala is coming for you. Combo breaker. 11 players just dropped their 11 people missed this answer. So let's see. Question 5. Which of the following is not a stage in the product life cycle? Which one is not a stage in the product life cycle? Good job. Good job. So we have introduced, growth, maturity, and decline. Market demand is not part of the product life cycle. Good job. Good job, everyone. So we still have Didi, Bad, Musala. Bad came back up. Tito and Ida, and 3 players just its answer straight for. Good job. Let's see. Last question. Which of the following is not a way to document your product vision? Okay, good job. 34. Yeah, there is no craft board. It's vision board, vision box, and elevator pitch. Okay. The one that is not there is the craft box. Good job. So let's see the board. In the 3rd place, we have Mohammed from nowhere. Mo Salah. And we have in the first place, we have Didi and Bad and Elip as runner up. Well done, guys. Well done. Good job. Good job. Good job. And to everyone that is getting it but not on the podium, good job. Because sometimes if you are not fast or your internet is slow, you won't be the fastest finger. Good job. Good job. Okay, so we'll take 5 minute break. We'll come back at let's come back at 9:05. Then we'll start agile. Okay, at 9:05. Okay.
Sorry, is the class on break? Hello?
Yes, but we are almost 3 minutes back.
Okay.
We're coming back at 9:05.
Okay, and you just pause.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're gonna start Agile right now, and we're gonna deep dive into Scrum. So what are we gonna be learning here? We're gonna start with what is Agile. We're gonna talk about Agile manifestos and values, Agile principles, why Agile, Agile umbrella. We'll talk about the Scrum theories, Scrum values, Scrum rules, events, and artifact and estimations. Okay, so we're gonna start this. We are not gonna finish this today. Obviously, we'll finish it by Friday. And we're gonna start simulations next week. So on Friday, I'm gonna give you some documents, and I'm also going to give you an assignment that you're gonna work on that you bring in on Monday for the simulations. Okay, so let's start. So what is Agile? What is Agile? I want to give people opportunity to tell me what Agile is. What do you think Agile is to you? What is Agile? How do you say the word Agile? When you hear about Agile, what does it mean to you? Who's going first? So S says iterative. Tony is saying something fast, quick. Abolaji is saying adaptive. Tolu is saying mindset, flexible. Flexibility. Good. Sharp in Naija balance. Continuous improvement. Good. I like that. Flexibility. I like that. Mindset. Adaptable. Fast. Iterative. It is a mindset. Mercy. Good. Yes, I agree with everything you've been saying. I agree. So Agile is a mindset, right? And the mindset focuses on being agile, right? So it says that being agile, right, is the foundation for success in doing agile, right? So when you say you have an agile mindset, right, it means that you are going to uphold the core values of agile and be guided by the principles, right? So that is what it means when you say you are agile in nature, right? So agile is people-centric. As you guys are saying, it's a mindset. It means flexibility. It means fast. It means quick. It means adaptability, right? So it focuses on being agile as a foundation for success, is doing agile, right? Now, if you say you are agile, if you say you have an agile mindset, you must uphold the core values of agile, and you must be guided by the principles, right? And all this is manifested through unlimited practice. You can see this, right? Agile is a mindset. It is described by 4 values, defined by 12 principles, and manifested through unlimited number of practices, right? That unlimited number of practices, that is what we see. So when you hear things like Scrum, Safe, Kanban, that's what people see. That's what they call agile. But those things are just practices, right? That helps us, right, to manifest agile. I hope you get where I'm coming from, right? So we are using different practices, different ways of working to manifest agile. But if you say you are agile, it is a mindset, right? And for you to say you are agile in nature, right, you need to uphold the 4 values, right, and be guided by the 12 principles. Okay, so if you look at this iceberg here, right, you can see something, right? What you can't see the mindset, the values, the principles, those are deep-rooted. Those are what it means to be agile. But you are just manifesting them through practices and tools. Practices using Scrum, Kanban, all those things, tools, Jira, Confluence. But the truth is that agile is a mindset, right? And it's built on those core values and 12 principles, okay? Now, history of agile. So I'm going to go back to 1913, right? And this was during Henry Ford period, right? So here, Henry Ford developed like a first assembly line in Michigan there, right? So at that time, that concept was very revolutionary. So what happened then was that, this production line, the car production line. So I think for you to build a car in those days, Henry Ford, we all know Ford Motors, right? For you to build a car in those days, it takes about 10 hours to actually build a complete car, right? So what Henry Ford did then was very revolutionary. It reduced the time it takes to build a car from 10 hours to about 1.5 hours, thereby reducing the cost of production by 50%, right? So what it did then was that, I think the production line, when they want to build a car, right? They build the different parts, right? As they are building the different parts, they always, take it around to try and, I think then they'll take each of the parts to where the cars are, then they will build the car, they start building the car, they start moving the car about in terms of in cranes, right? To build the cars in such a way that it takes time. So what Henry Ford did was he did a production line, like a flow of production, right? So that flow of production is a new lexicon that was added into a new word that was added into our lexicon, right? So he built something we call flow of production in such a way that you can build that car easily. So I think it started from the chassis of the car, where it's easier for you to put the tires and all those things. Then you can roll the car to the next line. They fix in maybe the doors, the windows. You roll it to the next line. They fix in the chairs. You roll it to the next line. They fix. So it was like a flow of production. What needs to start? You need to have to make sure that maybe the tires are available in the car before they can move to the next, like something like that. So they built a flow of production where it now became easier. So nobody's actually moving the car in cranes from one location to the other, right? They built it in such a way that there is a flow and the car, it can easily move as they are building it. So it reduced that flow of production. And that's how the whole process of being, the concept of agile, as at that time, it wasn't really agile. It was more like they call it flow of production. They started talking about lean management, right? That was what was the intent then. Then this continued also until 1948. Toyota, we all know Toyota, to another manufacturing car. They also reduced their own assembly line as well. They call it then the TPS, the Toyota Production System, right? So what they did was they recognized that there's an interaction between technology and the people that are working on it, right? So what they decided to do then was to focus on three areas, three things. They call it Muri, Mura, Muda. So those three areas were called Muri, Mura, Muda. Muri was like overburdening of both the system and the people. Mura was the one of smoothing out all the unevenness in the process, all the places where it wasn't even enough. They want to smoothing out all the unevenness. And the Muda was the elimination of waste. So that is what the engineers wanted to focus on then in Toyota, and they call it the Toyota production system. So all those three were important to them, but they now focus more on Muda. Muda was the elimination of waste. I know you guys will have been hearing about this, especially for those people that have done is it Lean Sigma or some Sigma 6 or something like that, right? They focus on waste. So they said, okay, let's eliminate waste in our processes. Let's remove the waste, right? And they identified about 7 types of waste. They said there is something called inventory waste, waiting waste, defect waste, of overproduction, right? We know what all these things mean. Overproduction, you are producing more than is required. And I think that's when they introduced that word called just in time. You produce as needed, just as needed, right? They talk about the defect waste. When you produce something and it's not good, because it takes you a more time to reproduce that thing. They talk about transportation waste, over processing, right? They also added underutilization of people is a waste. Not using the talent skill of people to their greatest benefit is a waste. So they identified those waste. They call it the 7 areas, right, of waste, which is muda. So they try to eliminate that. And, they continue to improve that process. So I think that's when, the lean management thing, lean manufacturing was very common then. So the Toyota way was gaining a lot of traction, like over 30 years, right? So lean was first mentioned like in 1988, right? So when they talk about the lean production system of where it focused on Muri, Muda, and Mura, right? So that was how they were able to remove that waste, and they would start talking about lean principles. So if you guys have heard about lean principle and all that. So in 1986, Harvard Business Review, they brought out an article. They called that article the New Product Development Game. That was a game changer. What was the article talking about? The article was talking about the rugby game. This our rugby game that we play, right? So, in rugby, when they want to play, they all come together, right? If you guys have watched the rugby game, they all come together, something like this. Let me quickly show you. They are always like this, right? They always come together to begin a match, maybe after a rule of violation or an error or a foul, right? They always come together like this to fight for the ball, right? Unlike when it comes to relay. In relay, you're always passing the baton to somebody, right? You pass it to another person when you're done. So they liken that relay, right? They liken the relay to our traditional way of delivering products, right? They liken it to that. They said, oh, when you finish requirement gathering, it goes to design. When you do design, it goes to development. After development, it goes to testing, right? So they now said that over time, as the new generation, that people are going to be working together from start to finish, right? That the new way of working is going to be like the rugby way, the rugby game, right? So that's how team will come together instead of a relay race, handing batting from one person to another. But team will now start working together. That was what that paper was talking about. You guys can go read about it. The New Product Development Game in 1986. So that's continued as well. Then in the software development area, that principle started gaining traction. That principle of the rugby game, that people coming together to work instead of passing the baton one after the other to each other. So the principle started gaining traction throughout the 1990s, right? Different software methodology were being conceived. We have what we call the extreme programming, RXP. We have ROP, to name a few out of them. We had different ones were coming up, right? So at that point in time, everyone was also looking for ways to do software development, because that relay, the way they were passing the baton, it takes time. It wastes their time. And because in technology, you see what happened is that most time when you finish developing, by the time you are passing it back to the customer will tell you they don't even know they requested for those information. They are not sure they requested for the feature anymore, or they will say, oh, this is not what we were requesting for. You're building what we didn't request for, right? So there was a lot of frustration within the software community, a lot of frustration, right? So everybody was coming up with different ideas. Even Scrum was also beginning at that point in time, right? So in early 90s, you were seeing a lot of people working on different type of software methodology at that time, right? So in 1995, we had Jeff Sunderland and Ken Schwaber. They jointly presented a paper, right? They described Scrum framework at a business object design and implementation workshop. So business object design and implementation workshop is for like software gurus, right? So if you guys did a bit of programming, you know what they mean by business object, right? So they did that presentation then, and people like the Scrum way of working. So at that point in time, Scrum continues to now evolve among that community. They continued, but that frustration was still there. Everyone in the software community wants to change the way they were actually delivering project. Now, in 2001, they had a meeting, right? All the thought leaders, when they say someone is a thought leader, that means in software, right? These people are thought leaders. They are the ones that are the leaders. They give they give information, they give updates. They are the one that teaches people that when they say you are a thought leader, that means you are good. You are like an expert in that area. So 17 of that thought leader in 2001, they came together in a resort in Utah, right? So this group, they came together because they wanted to discuss the challenge in the traditional software development process. That they know there is a challenge, so they want to discuss that challenge and find a goal. Like, how can we solve that problem in our current traditional way of developing software? So those practitioners were frustrated with the waterfall approach, right? So they know what they came there for. All of them identified that they had a common problem in software development, right? So what do they want? What were they clamoring for? They said they wanted a lightweight methodology, something light, something that is easy, right? So during that 2-day summit, all the professionals listened to one another. They voiced out their feedback on their different experiences. So as they are voicing out their different experiences, they were coming up with words, right, that they will all agree on. Some people said that they want something lightweight. Some people said that they want something adaptive, right? Some people said they want something flexible. Some people said they wanted something fast, right? So after all the discussion and analysis and everything, they came up with a word. They formed a consensus on the word agile. And that's where agile came about, right? They formed a consensus and they had that word we called agile, right? So they said that the development, the software development was saying that, okay, what does it mean to be agile? They said that it means that you are able to adapt, right, to the changing environments and nature of the work, right? Something agile. So the group now established that coalition and they called it the Agile Alliance, right? And that's where the Agile Alliance came from, right? Now, this Agile Alliance, you can see that even when you go to PMI has a book on Agile, ACP, PMI ACP. If you look at that book, they will say this book is in conjunction with what was agreed in the Agile Alliance. If you go to IIBA and you're doing the IIBA Agile module, they will say in alliance, in conjunction with the Agile Alliance, right? That was the foundation, right? The group came up with what we call the 4 core values and the 12 principles. So that 4 core values, they call it the Agile Manifesto. So they say that anything you are practicing, any type of framework you do, right, you must adhere to those Agile manifestos and 12 principles, right? So before you know it, the Agile movement begin to gain traction. And, as they continued, they agreed. And before you know it, every organization was using the Agile way of working to deliver software. Then in 2005, they now started to extend it in such a way that they started looking at it from the enterprise way of working, right? Enterprise framework. And that's where you start hearing things like SAFe, less safe and all those things, because they want to extend it in such a way that this can be used enterprise-wide and not just focusing on software development. So that was the history. That's the history of Agile. So Agile is just a means to an end. As I was telling you, right, it's just a process, right? It has actually became like a beast in today's world, right? It just started really just from software development. And before you know it, it's used everywhere, in HR, in marketing. Everyone wants to use Agile, right? So, but that is how it came about. They were just tired of the way things were working, right? And they realized that, but one of the major issues of Agile is that it does not fit into today's way of working, right? Because we are still used to that functional way. So it will be difficult. I know, was it yesterday that Mohammed was saying, I don't know if it was Mohammed or someone was asking a question that was saying that, but when you get to this most organization, they are not doing Agile really. It's difficult, right? Because the organization already has a way of working. They are structured in functional ways, right? So people are just they are trying to eliminate this new way of working. Everyone wants to do the Agile way of working. So it's difficult. Some organizations are combining it. Some are saying, okay, let's just do this Agile completely. So it's still very tough, but that is a beast right now. Everybody wants to use that way of working to actually do their work and implement projects. Okay, so let's go now into the Agile values. Before I go into the Agile values, do we have any questions? Okay, so this is the Agile Manifesto. And if you go to agilemanifesto.org, you can see the Agile Manifestos there. So what are they saying here? They are saying that while we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it, through this work, we have come to value. So did you see they said, while we are uncovering better ways, that means they keep looking for better ways to develop software, right? So we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it, right? Through this work, we have come to value, right, the things on the right? Why we value the things on the right, we value the item on the left more, right? Sorry, my phone is ringing. Why there is value on the things on the right, we value the items on the left more. So what they are saying is that why they value these things on the right, they value the things on the left more. So what are these things on the left, right? They say they value individual and interaction over processes and tools, right? So they say that they want the team to work together. They want to empower the team, right? Over processes and tools, right? They prefer for us to come together and work together in a war room. So when you work in a Scrum team, in an Agile environment, they'll tell you that we are working in the war room. They'll tell you we are in the collocation room. That's what it means, that they are working together. They are doing a face-to-face collaboration, right? They said they value all those things over processes and tools. They said they value a working software over comprehensive documentation. You are building a Salesforce implementation. You are writing documentation, writing requirements, writing all those details. Is the application working? No. They value that the application is working over those documentation. They are not saying don't write documentation, but they are saying that they value working software over documentations. They value customer collaboration over contract negotiation, right? In normal traditional waterfall, before they even start, they put all their contract together. They will approve contract. They will go through procurement. When that is approved, if there's going to be any changes, they will also go through another process, right? A change management board to make any change, right? What they are saying that they value customer collaboration. In Agile, for example, in Scrum, they will do something they will call sprint review. The customer will change a requirement. They will add it to the backlog again because they value that customer collaboration. That is what they value, right? And then I'm not saying that they respond to change over a plan. Then when we follow a plan in traditional waterfall, before you can change that plan, you have to go through a change plan. You have to go to a CAB, right? A change control boards, right? To make changes. They will have to look at the impact of those changes you want to make. But they are saying in Agile, they respond to change, right? Over them following a plan. They are not saying don't make plan. Make plan. But if there's going to be a change, they will respond to it faster, right? Than you just saying that before you can make that changes, we have to go through different processes again to make that changes. So this is what the Agile values is saying. So if you're going to be working in an environment that is Agile, either they are using Scrum or they are using Kanban or they are using an hybrid methodology or any form of framework they are using, as long as they follow these values, right? Then you say they are being Agile, right? So everything is not just about Scrum. It's just that most organizations that manifest this Agile, they use Scrum. And that's why, because Scrum is now so popular, because Scrum is the major one that they use, right? But any organization that practices these things, right, they are also being Agile, okay? So these are the 4 Agile values. Now, these are the principles, 12 principles. They are also derived from those Agile values. The first one talks about customer satisfaction is highest priority. So our highest priority is to satisfy customer through early and continuous delivery. How do you satisfy your customer? How do you make them a priority? You are delivering something. Every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, you have it's something you are delivering to your customer. You are delivering a new feature. You are delivering a new thing to the customer to be able to use. So they value that. Remember when we did Company A and Company B? Company B in 4 months had delivered something to their users, right? And they continue to get feedback to add more information. Why Company A is still using the traditional way and they are not ready until about 8 months before they can give something to the customer. So Agile says that if you are following the principles of Agile, customer satisfaction is a priority. So if you get an organization and you are saying that they are taking forever to deliver something to the customer, then you can say that they are not following the Agile principles, okay? So it's very important for them. That's one of their highest priority. They said changing requirements are always welcome. Remember that value, right? They respond to change. So welcoming changing requirements, even late in development, they are welcome. Imagine you've developed the application to a certain level and the stakeholder is telling you, oh, we need to change this field. We want the field to be able to do this calculation or something. The team, the development team is welcoming it. Right, that changes, they will work on it to satisfy the customer. They won't even think twice about it, right? Remember Uber, right? Uber's direction was supposed to be taking everyone up and down, right? They take us from one location to another. Remember during COVID, they said nobody should go out. Then everybody was saying, oh, if we cannot go out, then deliver something to us. Before you know it, Uber Eats was the main thing. They were changing all their Uber drivers to Uber Eats drivers, right? So they were responding to change. They welcome change, right? So that is one of the principles of working in an Agile environment. They adhere to these principles. Frequent delivery of working software. I don't think we can say that much, right? So they are saying that they want you to deliver it frequently. So it's not like you wait for 8 months to deliver something. They want it, prefers is shorter time scale. If you can do it in 1 month, deliver something in 1 month. If you can deliver in 2 months, deliver something in 2 months. Deliver something frequently. Working together on a daily basis. So business people and developer must work together on a daily basis. So that's why you look at Scrum. Scrum is always like a big family. You have the business people, the product owner, and you have the developers, everybody working together to deliver something, right? So that is what the principles say, that you must work together. It's not the one that the business will tell you, we want this, and they will go away and you guys will just be rambling to develop it. No, you are all working together. The product owner will also attend all the meetings every day as you are having those meetings. Trust and support the team to get the job done. Give them proper environment. So you need to give them a proper environment. You need to motivate the team. You need to trust them to get the job done. You don't micromanage them. You trust them and you empower them. So if you look at Scrum, Scrum will say we are a cross-functional team. We are a self-managing team. This is what they are adhering to. They are keeping to this principle that tells them that you should empower them, you should trust them. Remember that their biggest asset is the people, not the process, right? So they want you to build the product around motivated people, okay? Face-to-face conversation between the team. I think we've discussed this already, right? So they believe that you have to, the way you convey the message face-to-face is the best way, is the most efficient way, is the most effective way. And that's why you see in Scrum team, they want to have a collocation, but because of COVID, a lot of things are changed. But if you're working in an agile environment, it's always a team where they are collocated together to get the job done. Working software is the primary measure of success. So it's not just about your documentation. What did you achieve in 3 months? Is the application working? That's how they measure their success. Sustainable development. What that means is that have a consistent way you are developing Scrum. Maintain that pace. Is it every 2 weeks? Is it every 4 weeks? And that's why they call it sprints in Scrum, right? They do a sprint, so because they have to maintain consistency. Right, that's why you hear about the word sprint, which we're going to explain when we start talking about Scrum. Continuous attention to technical excellence, right? Because they believe that if you don't pay attention, you're going to have a lot of rework. So instead of you having a lot of rework, make sure you are paying attention to technical excellence. Make sure you are putting plans in place to deliver the application in such a way that is good design. So, for example, some people, when they do coding, they will do hard coding. It will be so difficult for somebody else to come and read their code or to work on their code. So, but most organizations will have a standard way, the way they want you to write your code, so that if anybody else comes to review your code, it's easier for them, right? So you have to focus attention to those technical excellence. Maintain simplicity. What they are just saying is that most of the time, remember the Pareto principle, 80-20. Nobody's going to use all the application you are building, all the features you're building, right? So focus on the most important one. Focus on the essential ones. So maintain simplicity. The best results come from self-organizing team. We've said that already, right? Self-managing team. Trust them to get the job done. Empower them. Don't be like the theory Y. Be like the Theory X manager. Theory X manager empowers people. They let people get their job done. Theory Ys are micromanagers, right? But in Scrum, they appreciate when their managers are a Theory X manager. Okay? Reflect and adjust regularly and accordingly. So you're always reflecting on what you're doing. And that's why in Scrum, they do something we call sprint retrospective, right? To review the work, right? We're going to talk about that. They focus on that to review the work that they've been doing, to make changes, to improve their processes. Okay, so those are the 12 principles. So if you're working in an agile environment, they want you to add up all these core values and adhere to those principles. Any questions? So we understand the agile values and principles, okay? So agile may have started in software development, but it is now being applied in all areas of business. So I said this already, right? I said that it started from software development, but right now it has expanded into different areas: marketing, product delivery, business agility, human resources. A lot of areas now use agile. Okay. So why do we do agile? While agile, right? Remember, customer is king. So customer first product thinking mindset. Always think about the customer. So customer is king in agile, right? And customers do like it. They enjoy it because they believe that they are seeing what you are working on. They can see it on time. They can review. They can either agree. They can tell you to make changes. So they are following up. So it's just that customer first. You're thinking about the customer, right? So faster time to delivery. We've talked about it when we talk about what agile means to you, right? Faster time to deliver. Minimize exposure to risk, right? So it's minimize your exposure to risk. Remember that time where company A is taking 8 months to deliver, right? And they did still not even meet customer expectation even after 8 months, because the customer cannot even remember that they requested for this, right? But company B has already delivered a minimal viable product at that time, right? So they are minimizing their exposure to risk. It helps with engagement and team creativity. Remember, individual interaction, right? Individual interaction over processes. So people, when people work in agile, it gives them opportunity to be creative, right? So it's improved that team creativity and engagement. Volatile markets, things are always changing so fast. So imagine you are building something and it's taking you forever, right? And before you know it, things have changed again, right? So the environment is volatile, the market is volatile. And the last one, failing fast and learning from it. When you're in agile, you fail fast because you know that, oh, you produce this thing and it's failing, and then you can learn from it and be better. So S is saying, since in agile, we are always changing requirements to please the customer, how do we guard against scope creep in a project? Very true, very true. It always happens a lot, right? So the way I do that is, most of the time, the customer will always make changes. As you're building, as you're developing and showing the customer, they will always make changes. So one of the things you want to do is you want to ensure that the changes that the customer is requesting for still aligns with the goal of the product, right? It aligns. So you're always going to welcome those changes, right? But just know that as those changes are coming in, the product owner or the stakeholder, the customer, has to tell you which one is of priority, right? Because you've already planned that you want to do something, and if they're saying that they are bringing new changes, new requirements, they have to prioritize those requirements, right? They will reprioritize this and say, this is more important, you should focus on this. And remember, I said the 80-20 principle, right? You have to focus on the one that is more important, right? You don't have to do all the features of the product. Which one are more important to the users, to the customers, right? Yes, so it will always happen. So at this when it comes to agile, scope is not something that is when you're doing projects, right? You say scope is defined, is fully defined, that is it, right? But in agile, your scope is loosely defined. It's not fully defined in such a way that you cannot change it. Changes will always happen in agile, right? So, but you just want to make sure that your customer is prioritizing which one is more of priority to them, right? So, which lead me to this, the next slide, which talk about in agile, you are always planning. In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So in agile, right, you upfront, you are not perfect. You are always planning. So continuous planning is key. And that's one of the agile principles, which is you are responding to change, is a key principle in agile. So you won't see it as scope creep. It just means that you keep on planning and you keep up reprioritizing. And that's why we have what we call release planning. We have sprint planning, right? Which I'm going to show you when we get into Scrum. Okay. S, is that clear? Or do you have any other question? Okay. Any other questions from anyone before we move on? Okay. So what is the difference between Scrum and Agile? right? This is the difference between Scrum and Agile. Remember all the things we said about Agile, right? Agile, is a mindset, right? That is based on some values and principles, right? Now, that Agile is just an umbrella for all these frameworks, all these practices, right? Scrum is one of those practices on a team level methodology. So all these things you see here, they are all Agile, right? But Scrum is one of them. Kanban is one of them. Scrumban is one of them. SP is one of them. FDD, data-driven behavior, they are all part of it, right? But Scrum is the most popular on a team level. Now, on an enterprise level framework, we have SAFe, Scrum of Scrum, Discipline Agile Delivery, Large Scale Scrum, Internal Created Method, Enterprise Scrum, Lean Management, Agile Portfolio Management, right? So this is on a team level methodology. We have the enterprise framework, but all this all together are all Agile. Okay, now, most commonly used Agile methodologies, right? As we said, they are all Agile, remember. Now, Scrum is the most used, is the most common methodology, right? Is the most common methodology, right? Now, we have Kanban too. We have people that combine Scrum and Kanban together, and they call it Scrumban. You have hybrid methodologies. Remember when I said I wasn't sure if it's Mohammed. That was actually yesterday that some organization, they will say they are doing Scrum. When you get there, they are not doing Scrum. It might just be that they are doing some Agile stuff. Maybe they are doing an hybrid methodology. They combine some processes in their organization and they form their own, right? So they are still doing that element of Agile, but they might not be using Scrum, right? But they might be using some element of Scrum which they combine with their own processes and they call it an hybrid methodology, right? So these are the common Agile methodologies or internally created methods. Some organizations will create their own, right? It doesn't mean they are not doing Agile. As long as they adhere to these values and these principles, then they are fine. Agile, yes, they are fine, okay? So that is it. So Agile is just an umbrella. There are a lot of different framework, Lean, XP, Scrum, they are different, right? But Scrum and Kanban are the most popular ones, okay? Ogochiku, you asked about will I be sending this slide? So I'll put this slide in such a way in a Word document for you people, right? And I'm going to be sharing that on Friday, right? So you guys will have that information. So everything is in that document. I'm going to share it on Friday with you guys with the assignments, okay? That will be shared with you, okay? Before we start the simulation, okay? So how does this relate to Agile marketing? It's still the same thing. So what they are saying is that marketing is a way, right? Marketing is an industry, right? The way we have technology, right? So Agile marketing is that they are just using Agile in marketing, right? So they can either use it Scrum, they can use Kanban, they can even do their own internally created way, right? Remember we talked about the fact that Agile is now being used in every area, right? In product delivery, in human resources, marketing management, right? So they started using it everywhere. So it's still the same Agile, right? Now we said that are there Kanban masters, just as we have Scrum masters. There's nothing like Kanban master. I think people that do Scrum master, they are also the one that also run a Kanban, right? So as the Scrum master, you can advise, when you look at the way the team is working, you can advise them to use Kanban. I will show you what the difference between a Kanban and a Scrum is. Okay, those are the two areas that I will focus on. So you as the Scrum master can also advise a team to use Kanban, right? Because there are some things that will make them not to be able to do Scrum, right? For example, if they don't have an allocated team, if those team members are working on different projects, there's no point doing Scrum, right? Because they don't have an allocated team for them to be able to do Scrum. So you can advise that for that project, they should do a Kanban, okay? So I'm going to show you the difference between that Scrum and Kanban. Most time you won't see what Kanban master, you just see a Scrum master role that they will request that, do you have an understanding of Kanban and of Scrum as well? Okay? Is that clear? I did that one. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, good. So as we said, Scrum is one way of implementing Agile, right? So is a framework where people, that game of rugby, instead of us doing relay, we are saying that let's work together at the same time. Let's be working together. So the team is aggressively trying to get the ball, right? Working together as one unit, right? So that's the way Scrum is as well, right? You are saying that let's function together, cross-functional team, and focus on advancing the common goal, right? And this Scrum was published by Jeff Sunderland and Ken Schwaber, right? I'll tell you that the two of them have now separated. They are still talking about Scrum, but one is now in Scrum Alliance and the other is now scrum.org. I will explain all that to you guys later. Okay, but Scrum is one of the most common way, right, of implementing Agile. The second one is the Kanban, right? Kanban is also one way of implementing that Agile, right? So this one is more like a pull system, right, rather than a push system. So what do we do here, right? In Kanban, you have something we call backlog. Just have an idea. A backlog is like, all the things you want to do, you put them in a particular place. That's what we call backlog. We're saying that items we want to do, let's put them in a backlog, right? So what you now do is the work you want to do. Okay, Ogochuka, I'm going to reply you, okay? So how do we take, in this, we're not saying that, okay, design, development, testing done. You will take work from the backlog and put it into the design and start working on it, right? Now you can see the 4 at the top of the design. Those things are called work in like the work limits of that session. So you cannot do more than that particular work limits, right? In that scenario. So they have a work limit, right? So what am I trying to say? If you are in design, if you pick up to 4 items, you can't do more than 4 items. You can only add more items from the backlog if you have less than 4 items. So in this scenario, we have 3 items. So you can still move 1 from the backlog, right, into the design, right? Development, the work limit is 7. So you cannot move in any item into the development phase until you have removed some item away from the development phase, right? Until you remove some item, then you can add more item from design into development, right? Now, if you are in testing, you see that we can still move one item to testing because the work limit is 4, right? So, and we have 3 items here, right? So in Kanban, there is a work limit, right? Another thing you want to know about Kanban is that there is nothing like sprint planning. They don't use sprints, right? They don't have any described meeting, right? Unlike Scrum. So in Kanban, you can just decide that you want to have maybe 1 meeting a week just to have discussion or something. There is no meeting in Scrum. So what they focus more is the work limits, right? So this is what the difference between Scrum and Kanban is. Because after this, I'm not going to talk about Kanban anymore. We'll just focus in Scrum. We'll now start deep diving into Scrum. So let me answer Ogochukwu's question. How do we take our place in the industry after this class? So depending on the role you are going for, right? So if you're going for a Salesforce consultant, a Salesforce business analyst, by the time we deep dive into Scrum, you will understand how that process works. So it means that you can work in a Scrum environment. You can work in an agile environment because you understand the practices of how that is done, right? Now, if you want to combine your role and say, I'm a Salesforce business analyst and I can work as a Scrum master in a Salesforce implementation, then the deep dive, you will now own it. I will tell you what you can do as a Scrum master, what you need to know, right? If you're just going to be working in a Scrum team, then you just need to understand process and know that as a business analyst on the Scrum team, this is what my role will be. I'm part of the development team to get jobs done. I'm going to tell you that as well. Now, writing a recommended exam, I'll tell you about the exams that are available, right? And I'll tell you about CSM and PSM. And if you want to write it just to add to your certification to show that I actually know this thing, then that would be a good one. But it's not like it's required for you to get your job. You just need to understand it, how that process works, so that you can fit in when you start working in an agile environment. Okay? Does that make sense to you, Ugochukwu? Okay, good. So this is where we are going to end the class today. It's the difference between Scrum and Kanban. We're going to end there. Then tomorrow we'll now start deep diving into Scrum. So we'll learn about Scrum tomorrow and Friday, and on Monday we start simulation. Okay? Now, I said in Kanban, there is no predefined roles. In Scrum, you have 3 roles that is there. We have the Scrum Master, the Product Owner, and the Developers. The Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Developers. It is called developers, but it doesn't mean they don't have different skills. They have testers. I've told you about testers. They have front-end and back-end developers. They have business analysts, right? But they are all just called developers, right? But they all have different skills. In Kanban, it is continuous. There's nothing like there's no time boxing where it's sprint planning, 2 weeks, 4 weeks sprint. There's nothing like that. It's continuous, right? But in Scrum, they have sprints, either 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 1 week. The most popular one is a 2-week sprint, right? Key metric is the cycle time in Kanban. In Scrum, it's called sprint velocity, right? I'll tell you what sprint velocity is and how to calculate sprint velocity, right? In Kanban, you pull the task you want to do and you must respect the work in progress limits, right? Remember when I told you about the work in progress, 4, 7, 4. If you have 4 items here, you cannot move any more items until you remove 1 before you can take any item from the backlog. So you must respect that work in progress limit. In Scrum, you pull a batch of work into sprints, right? And you now say that this is the work we are doing for the next 2 weeks. Then until you finish that work before you take another work again for the next 2 weeks. In Kanban, it is continuous. In Scrum, it's continuous in the backlog. I'll show you. You can refine the backlog. But when you're in active sprint, they don't want you to add more work. They want you to just focus on that work and get it done. Okay? So Kanban is best when tasks arise continuously, especially if the tasks are urgent. But Scrum is when you are committing to a 2 weeks deliverable. That these are the things you want to achieve for 2 weeks, right? Then, you know, we achieve that. So in Scrum, it's best when you can commit, when the team can commit. That's when the team is allocated, right? So Ola is saying, is the training sufficient to fully work as a Scrum Master, or are you required to hold certification? The training alone that I'm going to be teaching you and the simulation will be sufficient enough for you to work as a Scrum Master. But if you now want to hold certification just to prove, you know, a lot of people just believe that certification is a way to show that I actually know this thing and I've done an exam on it, then that would be a good thing as well. You can do that certification to show, because it will let you to read more, right? So, but the training alone, because I'm going to go into the practical, because sometimes you need that practical to actually operate, to give you that push to start. right? The certification is good for you to have deep knowledge about it because you need that confidence as well, right? So if you just focus on what I'm teaching, you will know it, you'll be able to do it. But if you just want something more in terms of showing that I actually know this and I passed an exam on it, then you can do a certification. Okay? But would we require to learn out of this awesome class to write the exam too? No. I'm going to teach you and I'm going to give you the documents you're going to read to do the exam. And you'll be good. And I'll give you the link to do some practice questions before you take the exam. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, great. So that's where we're going to stop this night. Ola, I'm not there because I am very, very busy. Yes, I know that question has been asked several times. We'll discuss that later, okay? Thank you so much, everyone. We'll continue tomorrow. We'll start the Scrum, and I want to tell you, you're going to enjoy it, and we'll do the practicals together. So you'll be good, okay? Great.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank you. So we'll speak tomorrow, okay?